You're listening to Life, the Universe, and Everything Else. Today on the show, we discuss some common misconceptions.
Life, the Universe, and Everything Else explores the intersection of science and society. Original music is produced by Ian James, and this episode was edited by Marissa McCool. Find her on Patreon at patreon.com/QAF.
My name is Jem Newman, and with me today I have Ashlyn Noble.
Hello.
Laura Creek Newman.
Hi there.
And Lauren Bailey.
Hello.
Today we're just going to do a quick grab bag episode and talk about some common misconceptions that folks have. We do one of these episodes now and again, and if there's a misconception that you've discovered that you'd like us to cover, then, dear listener, please drop us a line. You can reach us at LUEE podcast at winnipegskeptics.com. So I'm going to start us off with something that is a common area of confusion or misapprehension that I have heard relatively frequently, and that is, what is a heart attack? So before I get into the details, I'm going to give the now usual disclaimer. Nothing you hear on this podcast constitutes medical advice. Also, I'm not a cardiologist. I'm a family medicine resident, so while I'm usually guilty of overcomplicating things, there may be a few areas where I gloss over some details that an expert might think important. So with that in mind, let's talk about what a heart attack is. I'm going to name 3 medical conditions, and I'm going to go around my fellow panelists and ask them which one, if any, is a heart attack. So, the first one, congestive heart failure. Is that a heart attack?
No.
No.
Okay. Cardiac arrest. Is that a heart attack?
As far as I know, yes. No.
Myocardial infarction. Is that a heart attack?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you all just taking my lead?
That last one, we got it all right. A heart attack is the common term for myocardial infarction. So I'm going to talk about these 3 separate but related conditions, and we'll hash out what's going on here. But yes, when somebody says heart attack, what they mean is a myocardial infarction, or I guess vice versa. When somebody says myocardial infarction, or MI, they mean heart attack.
Did they make it as silly as possible to say? On purpose.
So myocardial infarction is a common cause of both congestive heart failure and cardiac arrest. Okay? But the MI is what will often cause those 2 things, although both of those other conditions can be caused by things other than myocardial infarction. So, we'll talk about MIs first, okay? So, a myocardial infarction is ischemic damage to the myocardium. So what that means in English...
Yes. An English doc.
is that's damage that happens to the heart because there's insufficient oxygenated blood flowing to the heart muscle itself, and then tissue dies. So myocardium is the heart, the muscle part of the heart wall, and infarction is tissue death caused by insufficient oxygen.
It gets completely farked up.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, Laura.
So an MI is a heart attack, and those can be subdivided into STEMIs and NSTEMIs. You can look those up on your own as homework if you want. Doesn't matter. The distinction doesn't matter for our purposes today.
Ashlyn's face just says, I will never
we're going
do
to
that.
spend a paragraph on it.
So, what are the symptoms of a heart attack? Does anyone know these?
Well, it depends on who you are.
Yeah, it does indeed depend on who you are. So the classic heart attack symptoms that we think of are much more common in older men, and they are less common. Heart attacks present less typically in people who are not men. That said, there aren't really other symptoms that are more common in women and non-men people. It's just the classic symptoms are less likely to appear in people other than men. So it is harder to diagnose.
Only because we haven't studied medicine and anybody who wasn't a white guy for a very long time.
So the classic symptom of an MI is crushing central chest pain or pressure, like the elephant sitting on your chest. And this is one where actually in other people that can present more like abdominal pain. The other classic symptom is shortness of breath. And sometimes you can get pain radiating to your neck or to either arm. Left arm is classic and slightly more common than right arm.
Oh, no.
You can also get sweating, pallor, weakness, dizziness, and nausea or vomiting. Shortness of breath is one of the most classic things. So what causes a heart attack? We're going to go through some basic cardiac physiology. Real quick, your heart is divided into two sides, okay? The right side of your heart pumps blood to your lungs, where it is filled with oxygen. Then that blood returns to the left side of your heart, and that pumps the oxygenated blood out to your tissues. And just as that blood exits the left side of your heart via the aorta, some of it circles back, and the blood is diverted to oxygenate the heart muscle itself. When your heart muscle is not getting enough blood, usually because there's a blockage, or less commonly because there's just not enough supply for the demand, that causes ischemia. Ischemia just means tissue isn't getting as much oxygen as it needs. And that ischemia can then progress to infarction, where ischemia is like tissue suffocating, infarction is the tissue's dead. Okay? So a myocardial infarction is caused when, for whatever reason, that blood can't circle back to the heart muscle itself, or not enough of it gets back to oxygenate the heart muscle for long enough that it sort of chokes and dies. So the most common cause, as I said, is a blockage. So usually somebody will have narrowed arteries. You got arterial plaque built up, so the artery gets narrower and narrower on the inside. And then there's some kind of clot that gets dislodged somewhere and plugs up that artery, chokes off the blood supply to a section of the heart. That causes ischemia, which results in a bunch of pain. That's where you get the crushing chest pain. And over time, it will result in infarction and death of a section of the heart muscle. So blockage is the most common cause. Less common, you can get what's called a supply-demand mismatch. It's a type 2 MI. And that can be caused either by somebody with just narrowed arteries and then they're exercising, for example. So there's an increased demand for oxygen because the heart's pumping faster, it's working harder, it needs more oxygen. But there isn't any more supply because the arteries are very narrowed, or because they're on some medication that prevents the supply from being increased to meet the demand. Or sometimes there's a supply-demand mismatch because the supply decreases. Like if somebody's having like a massive hemorrhage and they're exsanguinating, you won't have any blood supply to the heart either.
Yeah, it won't go back up.
Yeah. So how do we treat an MI? Well, the first thing we do is give them some aspirin to chew. And we give pain control with usually opioids like morphine, often some nitroglycerin, which dilates the blood vessels in the heart and relieves some of that ischemic pain. You can give them oxygen and beta blockers, but the most important thing is to get them to a cath lab. And what they're going to do is they're going to insert a catheter in the groin and they're going to go fishing. They're going to pull that clot right out. They're going to stent the arteries open and things are going to look a lot better. Sometimes they'll do bypass grafting. Usually that's not for we don't need to get into the details.
That's not the emergency part.
That's not the emergency part. And then if there's no way to get the person to like a cardiac center like St. Boniface Hospital here in Winnipeg, you can try busting the clot medically through thrombolysis, where basically you just give somebody a high dose of a medication that just chews through clots. But that is very dangerous, especially in older people who have bleeding risk, because they can have internal bleeding. They can bleed in their brain. They can cause a hemorrhagic stroke. So you got to be very careful. But if somebody's risk of death with bleeding versus certain death with a heart attack, you're going to try to bust that clot if you can.
Seems our friend T-Bird won't be joining us this evening on account of a slight case of death.
So if somebody's up in Churchill and there's no planes on the way, sometimes you gotta clot bust them.
Time is of the essence.
Exactly.
Bust them.
Because what we want is we want this pain, which is ischemic pain, we want to minimize the transformation into actual tissue death, right? Because once that tissue's dead, the heart is not going to be able to pump quite as well. And the more tissue death, the harder it is to pump enough blood for your body. And then we get into what we call heart failure.
I was right.
So,
Have I ever told my dad's heart attack story on this show?
I don't think so.
So it was quite a few years ago. I was like early teens, and he was coming home from, I believe, a business trip to Toronto, which was very rare. This was like an exciting thing that he had been chosen to go on. And he's coming home, and he starts feeling pain in his chest, and he starts thinking to myself, maybe I should have them have an ambulance meet me. But he doesn't say anything to anyone because he doesn't want to cause a fuss.
He's on a flight.
So he waits until he lands and goes and finds his car and drives to the emergency department and then looked around for a parking spot and didn't find one. So he drove farther away. No! Totally with you here. As he was telling me, the 13, 14-year-old, this, I was like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, just park outside the emergency department. Who cares about the car? Like, if you didn't get an ambulance to meet you and if you didn't call 911, like... So he said that when he got in there and they immediately put him into a room and gave him aspirin, that's when he realized, oh. Yeah, he ended up being fine and he's still with us, but Dad, do not do that.
Dads, plural, in general, do not do that.
Do not do that. Cause a scene. It's okay.
It is okay. And it is okay even if it's not a heart attack. Trust me. I will say this from experience. When people come in with chest pain and it turns out not to be a heart attack, we're not mad at them. We're happy for them. You're not gonna make our day worse by showing up and not having a heart attack.
Yeah. I recently had to take a friend to the emergency because they had reached such a level of dehydration that they were basically delirious. And we sat in the emergency waiting room and all it took was some, Pedialyte and some air conditioning, which was the mom medicine that I gave on the way to the hospital. And then they're like, okay, you're coming home with us to spend the night in the air conditioning tonight. But still, it was when I saw them at the door, I was like, no, we're going to the health sciences right now. Get in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why ERs are there.
Well,
Not as many of them as there used to be.
And this one was, yeah.
So, congestive heart failure. What is it? Well, as I said, it's the impaired ability for the heart to pump blood. This can either be left-sided heart failure or right-sided heart failure, or you can have a mixed picture. So, we talked about the cardiac physiology already. So, the left side of the heart pumps out to the body. It's bigger and stronger because there's a lot of body. Even in the smallest of us, there's a lot of body compared to the lungs. The right side just pumps to the lungs and back. So, left-sided heart failure is when the heart can't contract strongly enough on the left ventricle of the heart. So the bottom left of the heart can't push blood strong enough out to the rest of the body. As a result, oxygenated blood waiting to enter the left side of the heart from the lungs gets backed up because the left side of the heart can't push enough blood out at a time. So the blood backs up into the lungs, and that causes fluid overload in the lungs and a bunch of respiratory symptoms. Right-sided heart failure is when you have impaired contractility in the right ventricle, which means that the right side of the heart can't pump enough of the deoxygenated blood out into the lungs and then on into the left side of the heart. So as a result, deoxygenated blood waiting to enter the right side of the heart from the body gets backed up, which causes swelling. And this is like gravity-dependent swelling. So it'll pool in the legs first. And you get what we call pitting edema, where legs are really swollen and you can stick your finger in, and then it's like a marshmallow. You stick pull your
like
finger
memory
out.
foam.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Ask me how I know.
what are the symptoms of CHF? I should mention, we call it CHF for congestive heart failure because the congestive part is the fluid backup fluid congestion, and it graduates to congestive heart failure, according to most people, once it's symptomatic. So we have respiratory symptoms and we have swelling, as we discussed. So shortness of breath and coughing, especially if it's worse when lying flat, is a classic symptom of left-sided heart failure. Okay, so people, like, if they lie flat, they'll feel like they're drowning. And one of the screening questions we ask is, how many pillows do you sleep on at night? Mm-hmm. And if they're sleeping on 3 pillows to have their head propped up, or some people, they're sleeping in a lazy boy every night because they can't sleep lying down. That's tough. And then the other feature, which tends to be worse in right heart failure, is the swelling, the pitting edema to the lower extremities. And then in both, you get lots of fatigue and you get exercise intolerance and like that. So in terms of causes of congestive heart failure, MI is the big one, as we talked about. Heart attack can cause congestive heart failure because it damages the myocardium, the muscular part of the heart wall that does the pumping. Mm-hmm. And if that gets damaged, it's not going to pump as well. There's lots of other things, though, that can cause congestive heart failure. Long-standing high blood pressure, hypertension can cause it. Dysrhythmias, problems with heart rhythm, can impair the heart's ability to contract in kind of the pattern that it needs to push the blood out efficiently. And so if you have certain dysrhythmias, it used to be called arrhythmias, but it's not a lack of rhythm, it's just a bad rhythm. So you call them, anyway.
So white guy dancing.
Yeah, dad dance.
Yeah, exactly. That might be an arrhythmia, to be honest. Depends on the dad. You can also have heart failure caused by infections like endocarditis or myocarditis. So some people with myocarditis or endocarditis due to COVID can end up with heart failure. And there's also structural problems, either congenital or acquired, so damage to valves, valvular regurgitation, and like that. And then lung problems. Some people have what's called pulmonary hypertension, so high blood pressure in the lungs themselves. That causes right-sided heart failure because it's not that the right side of the heart has trouble pushing the blood. It's that it's pushing against so much resistance that it wears out. Mm-hmm. So how do we treat CHF? Well, when possible, we try to address the root cause of the heart failure. So if somebody has a dysrhythmia, for example, you can use a pacemaker, you can use antiarrhythmic drugs. CHF can't really be cured, but it can be managed. So if the heart failure is really advanced, you can look at heart transplantation. If the person's a candidate, just replace the heart. You can also use an LVAD, which is a left ventricular assist device. It's
made famous by Dick Cheney.
Yeah, it's what Dick Cheney had. It's basically like a little vacuum pump for your heart. It just goes right into your chest and it just shoots the blood through your arteries. You don't really have a pulse as much anymore, depending on how the LVAD is configured. Maybe some of them use pulses these days, but I know Dick Cheney didn't have a pulse.
Well, he was just using that as a cover.
Yeah.
Just a vampire. How do you get around it?
Yeah, he never had a pulse. He just got the device later.
Yeah.
He never had a heart.
I would while away the hour.
The main way it's managed is with, symptomatically, we do fluid management. So you do lifestyle modification. You try to get people exercising to condition them as well as they can. And you want to decrease the amount of fluid in the body to prevent it from backing up into the lungs and tissues. So you'll do fluid restriction. You can't drink more than 2 liters of fluid a day or however much.
That's hell.
You will do salt restriction as well.
Try
fluid.
1,000 milliliters a day.
Yeah. And then also diuretics. So you're just making them pee out all the water. Yeah, so that's heart failure. And then finally, cardiac arrest. What is it? Well,
It's just when it stops, right?
yeah, it's exactly what it does what it says on the tin. It's when the heart suddenly stops beating.
It stops doing what it does on the tin.
You can also call it cardiac arrest when the heart is beating so ineffectually that it's effectively stopped. So if somebody is pulseless, their heart can still be quivering a little bit, but we call it cardiac arrest.
Except if they're Dick Cheney.
It's basically a condition in which the heart becomes suddenly unable to pump blood. So the symptoms are fairly similar to an MI, but just very sudden and immediately terminal. So you get fatigue, dizziness, shortness of breath, nausea, chest pain. You can get heart palpitations where you get the sensation of your heart pounding out of your chest, and then that can stop, and then you get sudden loss
So
of
you get a
consciousness.
brief moment of, oh shit.
Yeah.
That's
Dear.
scary stuff.
The sweats come, and then the pumping, and then the non-pumping.
Yeah. So in terms of causes of cardiac arrest, it can be due to either an electrical problem, so like a dysrhythmia, or a mechanical problem. So it can be caused by a massive MI. That's one of the most common causes of cardiac arrest. It can be caused by trauma, like direct trauma to the heart, or massive trauma resulting in hemorrhage and exsanguination. It can be caused by a dysrhythmia that is, like, lots of people have dysrhythmias. They're pretty common, and for most people, they're asymptomatic, not a big deal. But some rhythms are more problematic than others. And some of the rhythms are so problematic that they cause the inability to really pump blood at all. It can be caused by enlarged heart, so like a cardiomyopathy, where the muscle dilates and thickens, leading to abnormal contraction patterns. And it can be caused by suffocation. If you basically, a massive MI will cause cardiac arrest. And then high levels of certain ions as well, like potassium or magnesium, can cause like sudden cardiac arrest.
Is that like a subcategory of electrical problem, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would cause a dysrhythmia, but we kind of categorize it separately because like it's not a problem with the electrical conduction or pathway
Like, it's
of the
not-
heart
yeah, it's
itself.
not a problem.
It's caused by, like, it's a secondary dysrhythmia, not a primary dysrhythmia.
We
I guess.
categorize it separately because we can.
Because we can. So in terms of treating cardiac arrest, who knows how to do that?
Get to the frickin' hospital.
Zap!
Depends.
Maybe, yeah. The first thing you do is you immediately start chest compressions to the tune of
Staying Alive by the Bee Gees.
Staying alive.
Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. I believe it's, 112 BPM, something like that.
Pure Heart Attack by Queen works too.
Yeah. So you start your chest compressions and you try frantically to remember where you last saw an AED because you know there's one nearby, but in the moment you won't be able to remember where it is.
First of all, you tell someone. This is
Yes.
other people are doing this. If
Yeah,
you are
exactly.
having the chest problems, you are not doing this to yourself.
Yeah.
Ashlyn's dad. Danny Noble.
I got this. How do I get these pads on?
Yeah. So that's what you want to do. You start chest compressions and you slap an AED on there and you follow its instructions and you make sure somebody's calling 911.
They are so easy to use.
They really are. They've got diagrams and everything.
They walk you through
Yeah,
it.
they tell
now.
you where the
Like,
pads go.
That's like they show you exactly what to do. They say like, do this now. All clear. Do this now.
Hey, shock advised.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really it's
sounds
not
really cool.
foolproof, but it's like it's really simple.
Yeah.
The machine does most of the work.
It
but
truly does. It is smarter than us.
So the way those things work is they're a combination of a relatively simple EKG that's analyzing the electrical rhythm in the heart and a defibrillator. Okay. AED stands for Automated External Defibrillator. So what they'll do is they'll take a look at what the heart's doing. And if it's a shockable rhythm, then it'll advise you to deliver a shock. You tell everybody to get clear. You hit that button, then you immediately start chest compressions again. I recommend everybody take a BLS, Basic Life Saving course. Take you an afternoon, and it won't get you comfortable with this stuff, but it will help.
if you take it every year because you have to for work when you work in the office, then you will get kind of comfortable with this stuff. And
There
you'll
you
have
go.
4 or 5 different of the manuals, which are on our bookshelf at home, that I hand out to people. Here's the life-saving guide.
Damn it, man, I'm trying to save an innocent life!
So if you have an actual EKG and you take a look at the strip of somebody who is having cardiac arrest, you will see one of 4 types of rhythms. Let's see if Jim can remember them off the top of his head. Ventricular fibrillation, pulseless ventricular tachycardia, pulseless electrical activity, and asystole. Okay?
Tachycardia was the one that's the one I know.
VTAC, yeah. So, in the first 2 of these rhythms, that's VFib and pulseless VTAC, the heart's electrical activity is sufficiently disorganized that even though the heart's still going to be moving, the contractions can't effectively pump blood. Just imagine the heart quivering like a bowl full of jelly. It can't really do much. In the other 2 rhythms, PEA, so pulseless electrical activity, or asystole, the heart is essentially not contracting at all. PEA is like a big category of dysrhythmias where basically it could look like almost anything on the rhythm strip, but the heart's not doing what the rhythm strip says it should be doing, and you're not getting a pulse. So, asystole, on the other hand, is the classic. Anyone know what that looks like?
Picture it. Asystole. 1913.
It is a flat line.
I just did, Jen.
And not a Golden Girls reference.
Here's another question. Do you then apply the paddles?
Clear!
No.
You got a flat line. Are you putting paddles on this patient?
Not unless someone tells me to. I'm not in charge.
I don't know, man.
No. Whenever you see a medical show where you see asystole and they're like, charge the defibrillator, clear! That is fake, made-up nonsense. Asystole is not a shockable rhythm. What they would be doing is chest compressions. That's the only thing you can do. If you have VFib or pulseless VTAC, then you're going to shock them. You may also you'll alternate shocks and chemical agents to try to get that heart into a better rhythm,
But if
more
there's
compatible
nothing
with
going
life.
on at all, then there's nothing to get back on track.
Yeah.
Exactly. Asystole is the flat line, and it is not a shockable rhythm. That's a secret second, common misconception in this, propagated by medical shows. If somebody's flatlining, you don't apply the paddles, it's not going to do anything. What you need to do is get blood pumping to the heart, because the heart basically is not getting any blood, so it can't contract. Okay? You need to at least physically start pumping some blood to the heart and giving rescue breaths as well to try to get the heart enough blood that maybe you can restart electrical activity. But that shock is not going to do anything if you're in asystole.
Are you going to talk about the other misconception about compressions versus AED?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
If you are doing chest compressions in a rescue situation, you are not going to restart the heart. You, random person who is helping this person having a heart attack, you are not going to be able to resuscitate them. They will not sit back up and start breathing and their heart beating again. You have to wait for medical help.
It is extremely unlikely.
Yes.
That
To the point where I can say it's not going to happen. You are helping them stay alive until someone who can actually do something gets there.
Yeah. Chest compression, time to good CPR and then time to AED are the two things that most drastically will increase survival. Survival for an out of hospital cardiac arrest, very low. It is much less likely that they will survive than that they won't survive, unfortunately. But there are things that we can do to make it more likely that they will beat the odds. So, PEA and pulseless electrical activity and asystole, those are almost mechanical problems in a sense. The heart is physically not capable of pumping the blood, whereas VFib and pulseless VTAC, that's an oversimplification, but for our purposes, it's close enough. Whereas VFib and pulseless VTAC, the heart is still doing a thing in a kind of disorganized way, and what you want to do is you want to reorganize it. And the way you do that is you shock it with electricity to essentially turn it off and turn it back on again.
You can say you're defragging the heart.
Hello, IG? Have you tried turning it off? You know what? I'm sick of saying that.
So this is, I would say you're rebooting the heart almost. It's something that, as a former software developer, I can appreciate. You turn it off and you turn it back on again. So the goal here is to achieve ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation. That can be achieved through a variety of ways. CPR alone, it can help. It can result in ROSC on its own. It is rare in very young patients who have a cardiopulmonary arrest due to drowning. That's kind of your best case scenario. Drowning in cold water is your best case scenario for out-of-hospital return of spontaneous circulation.
You should still go immediately
Absolutely.
to the emergency
No
room.
matter if that person ever sits up again, they're immediately going to the nearest emergency room, and they need to see cardiology and emergency physicians for post-cardiac arrest care. So, to summarize, a heart attack, that's a myocardial infarction. It's when the heart is damaged due to lack of oxygen. Depending on the location and extent of that damage caused by a heart attack, it may permanently impair the heart's ability to pump blood, which we call heart failure, or it may cause cardiac arrest, so the heart just stops completely. Though both of those conditions can be caused by things other than MI.
Alrighty.
Why don't we move on to maybe a lighter topic? I forget sometimes how morbid my chosen profession is. Let's move on to Ashlyn's segment, where they will tell us all about accommodations.
Awesome. I wanted to talk today about a Facebook post that I saw, as begin many of my segments.
Was it Shrimp Jesus?
No, I still have never seen one of those in the wild. KO'd made me see one with my own face eyes. Thankfully, my corner of the internet has the algorithm gods seem to understand that I hate AI.
Oh, wow.
And I have done a pretty good job of keeping it out of my feed.
Lucky you.
Yeah. One of the things that I shout a lot in my various ways is the need to accommodate yourself. And it occurs to me that a lot of people don't think about accommodations for people beyond the very basic. There are people who need accommodations are the disabled, quote unquote. And so things like canes or wheelchairs are things that come to mind when people think about when I need accommodations, like that phrase, or an ASL interpreter, or these larger things. I would like to talk today about the idea that it is possible to accommodate yourself in 100 different ways and to accommodate your friends and family and just to make life a more pleasant thing to live.
If a lot of people love each other, the world would be a better place to live.
And it is a nicer way to think about the world when you understand that all of us are accommodating ourselves in different ways already, and we can do that explicitly and plan for those things. One of the things that we have said on this podcast before is that all of us are only temporarily able-bodied. I am currently more able-bodied than I have been in the past, which gives me kind of an interesting perspective on things where I know I will be back in that place again at some point. But right now I can do a lot more things than I have been able to do. But there are ways in which that I have been accommodating myself for years and new ways that I find to accommodate myself every year that excite me. So in the beginning, you think about, well, a wheelchair is an accommodation for somebody who has some mobility problems, or a walker or a cane. And first of all, I want to tell every single person listening, if you think that you might get some use out of one of those devices, but you don't think you're disabled enough to need one, that is a lie that you have been telling yourself because of internalized ableism and societal brainwashing, and you should use whatever mobility device you think will make your life easier.
Knock the Calvinism out of your brain and do what your body needs.
So that's the first one. Lots of different ways to get access to those devices, and you should look into them if they're at all available to you, if you think that they would be helpful to you. And I know that a lot of things in this segment are going to come from a place of relative financial privilege, but I have gotten so many things from places like Buy Nothing groups and community spaces and just asking around. So it's worth a shot.
Truly, especially things like walkers and bath seats and things like that. Often people, for many people, they're used for short periods of time or temporarily after an injury or something like that. But you have to buy them, especially if you go to hospital, you buy it and they can't take it back for the health system. So lots of people will have these things kicking around and are actively looking for people who want them. So just ask.
We were thrift shopping last week and there was so many crutches and so many other mobility devices. So you can get them at a price point if you need to. Like, if you can't get them for free, they might be available for a slight price point as well.
Yeah. Also, if you can, and again, there's privilege in that with this, but look for trying to find the right fit for yourself, right? Because a walker isn't always the best choice for everybody, or you need to have the one that fits you and get it raised to the right height for you so that you don't cause other problems, if possible.
Yeah.
Just to accommodate yourself better. Anyway,
Exactly.
go on.
And you can always upgrade. If you find a crappy one, there's always...
Perfect is the enemy of good. Let's get there first.
Exactly. The next step for a lot of people when we're trying to broach this topic and get people to broaden their views is to get them to see things like eyeglasses as an accommodation for a disability.
What an excellent example.
I have had fancy eye surgery thanks to beautiful insurance benefits and no longer require glasses to see every day. But
At this point in time.
yeah, at this point in time.
Yeah.
And it will definitely go back the other way. I know at least 2 of our other panelists need glasses in certain circumstances, and probably all of us will get there at some point.
I am a little bit nearsighted, which means that as I age, I will need bifocals.
Yeah. Ugh.
But like, I feel like that's such a great example because I don't need glasses to drive. I can see well enough. But if I'm trying to read something really far away, like it's hard. And when I put my glasses on, I like see in HD.
Yeah,
it's
it's
great.
just better.
Yeah. I don't need that accommodation, but it's nice.
I have such a slight astigmatism that I don't need glasses, but it helps, especially as I'm over 40, with how things look fuzzy at night while I'm driving.
Yeah.
And that's a little scary on the highway.
Yeah, totally.
For a long time, I would bring a chair almost everywhere that I went. I had a folding chair with an adjustable back, which was the key to me. Any chair that won't let me lean back or change my position is going to hurt me after a while. So yeah, I just had a chair in the trunk of my car, and it's astonishing how few people or organizations or anybody will say anything if you just bring your own chair in and set it up. They're like, cool, you got your own chair, go for it. People complimented me on good idea bringing a chair, but I hardly ever got any trouble for it. So if you can accommodate yourself by throwing a chair in the back of your car, or they have these really cool telescoping stools now that are made of very light plastic and they don't weigh very much and they compact down to like a Frisbee size and they can hold like 600 pounds. So those have been really key for a lot of bigger people I know that have a hard time finding a small folding chair that they can carry around with them at places like festivals. So I really recommend those telescoping stools from what I've seen. And then
Hurricanes.
Sorry?
Hurricanes. Like, you don't need a cane all the time, but sometimes you might. They're on like a little lanyard on your wrist, and you kind of snap them out and use them to stand.
Neat.
They'll snap right out.
I like that idea.
Cool.
Right before the pandemic, I started wearing noise-canceling headphones pretty much everywhere. It turned out that restaurants were more pleasant when I wore noise-canceling headphones. Concerts, way better with noise-canceling headphones. Cancels out most of the crowd noise, but not at all anything that's coming over a loudspeaker. I can hear people beside me talking way better than people without headphones at a big concert, which has been an interesting plus. Think of the most awkward circumstance you can think of to wear noise-canceling headphones. Yes, I do.
Christmas dinner with your mother?
That's one of the only times that I have gotten pushback is fancy dinner with my mom. But wearing them all of the time has made me a better person to be around. I
love you.
I am less irritable because I can turn down the volume on the world, and that is an accommodation that I'm making for myself. It has been just really excellent and life-changing, and I recommend that anybody do anything like that for themselves that they think would help. There's a list of other sort of accommodations that I and others that I just sort of wanted to throw out there as here's a grab bag of things that I found really useful in my life, and maybe some of my co-hosts have things that will strike in their mind as accommodations that they didn't even think of were accommodations. One of the things that I have done that has made me able to organize my life and not live in a pile of trash, especially in my craft studio, is having a garbage can within arm's reach of literally everywhere I sit. If there's a garbage can that I can always reach over and put the thing into, it will not become a pile on whatever is beside me. If piles of Kleenex or discarded sticker backs are not your problem, maybe that's not something you need, but that's something that I needed in my life.
Something we needed in your life.
Yes. Did you know that you don't have to fold your clothes or hang them up or really have any
Ashlyn.
particular sort of system? Our family has switched to keeping all of our laundry essentially in the same room unless we're wearing it. It has reduced all kinds of dragging laundry around the house for no particular reason. We put shelves in the laundry room and each family member gets several baskets into which to sort their stuff. That was how it was living before anyway. So what's the difference now? It just doesn't need to have a guilt associated with it.
You don't have to drag baskets of laundry up the stairs and then put them into another room where laundry lives.
So it works for us. You don't need to adhere to whatever system society tells you laundry needs to be. Another thing that has been a good thing for me to understand is that if clothing needs a particular care to survive, it probably isn't a clothing item for me.
This shirt is dry clean only, which means it's dirty.
And this is something that I have also extended to houseplants.
Good luck, little
If
friend.
a plant survives,
If a plant is dry clean only.
right. But if my feeling is, especially when I did things like when I went to the cute little botanical gardens in Edmonton, I bought like a 6-pack of little different plants. Some of them have lived and some of them have not. And I have accepted that the ones that lived are the ones that I was supposed to have because those are the ones that can deal with our level of care.
This does not extend to house pets.
Very Darwinian of you.
It is. It is.
So in plants, I'm willing to extend that level of if it lives, it lives.
If he dies, he dies.
One thing we cannot keep alive is aloe.
Yeah, I'm really bad. I can't. I figured as a lamp worker I should have some for burns, but now that I know it's bullshit, I feel less bad about not being able to keep it alive.
There you go. See, it's all good. A very good friend of mine also developed that laundry, like the clothing choice system. She lives in a small space and doesn't have laundry in her suite. And just like out of necessity, but then also it made her more conscious of what she was buying and what she wanted and like living in her life that way. And so not trying to like figure out how she's going to deal with this, like all these like hang only things. It's like, no, it's going to have to go in the dryer because that's my life. How do I buy stuff that I like that fits, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah. So for lots of good reasons.
Yeah. We've been talking about making our house work for us instead of making our brains change to adapt to the way we have organized. We put a lot of our most frequently used kitchen tools and things out on the walls so that we can see them. They always go back in the same place. That's been a big thing for me, is having a place for literally everything, not just this goes here and that goes, over with that sort of stuff. Just like this belongs on this hook.
The pantry has all clear bins that are clearly labeled.
Yeah.
Oh, I love labels.
But these are labeled in very broad terms. So we have a sweet snacks bin. We have a salty snacks bin. We have a grains bin. And they're clear and you can see what's in them. And you put the things in that match that label.
It's been working for us for quite a while now. And
About 2 years.
So
Nice.
It's not just we did this last month and we're very excited about it.
You've proven that it has withstood the drop after the initial excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we do have to go in and tidy the pantry as
course.
everybody else does. But we have a way to tidy it.
The original Facebook post that set off this rant was about how we tell kids that this is not how the real world will be. In the real world, you won't be able to write with a pencil grip. In the real world, you won't be able to have a clipboard with you. In the real world, you won't have a calculator with you every moment of the day.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, how did that turn out?
Yeah, right.
There's no actual reason why an adult cannot use a pencil grip. There is no reason why any person shouldn't be able to use a clipboard if that's what it takes for them to write neatly or whatever. There's no reason why anybody should be shamed for using the little dealio that connects the chopsticks. These are all just tools that we as tool-using monkeys are using to make our life better. We are utilizing them. This has nothing to do with anything, I promise.
It does.
I just really believe that everyone could benefit from looking around and thinking about, like, what is the thing that is making the task that I need to do unpleasant. I did a segment on how much I dislike brushing my teeth a few years ago, and how, like, I have a really sensitive gag reflex, and I was trying to get that fixed and everything. And there have been a recent sort of influx of ideas around, even if brushing your teeth is hard, what is it about it that's hard? Is it the fact that you don't like mint toothpaste? And that's the only flavor that it comes in? Because actually you could just buy bubble gum or fruit punch or banana or whatever. If, like me, the root cause is the fact that it foams up freaks me out so much that I just, like, can't think about anything else. The actual, like, foaming agent in toothpaste is not necessary to get your teeth clean.
Nope, it's not.
And they sell ones that don't have that. Think about what in your life could easily be changed to make it better that maybe wouldn't, like, because these toothpaste that are for children don't cost anymore. Make sure they have fluoride in them, please.
They usually have less fluoride in them. That's one thing that you want to watch out for, because kids swallow more toothpaste than adults on average. So might need to put a bigger gob on there or something. But
accommodating yourself means taking away the forks. If you've heard of spoon theory, if you have, I don't have enough spoons to do that today is something that you might hear someone with a chronic illness say. I don't have the spell slots to do that today. I don't have the energy.
I'm out of mana.
Right. Forks are the opposite of spoons. Forks are things that are sticking in you that are sucking away energy. And if you remove a few forks, like people's chewing noises or the fact that you had to stand in line for 30 minutes when you could have been sitting on a portable stool or whatever, that can just improve everything about your life. And I encourage everybody to try it.
Turn on the captions, even if they are AI.
Anybody got any accommodations that they thought of in their own life?
That we've accommodated ourselves for?
What do you do for yourself that makes your life better?
Oh, not much. Grocery ordering and pickup.
Yes.
Like, I started because I was working 3 jobs, like full-time 3 jobs, 2 little kids, 2 different daycares, I think. Like, so to save that hour, like, the whole process still takes as much time, but it makes a big difference if you can do that grocery planning, like, at 11 o'clock at night on your own couch, and then, like, just stop and spend 20 minutes sitting in your own car while they bring it out to you, versus the who knows how long in the store, depending on the lines, and dealing with the lines at Superstore. It's the worst, especially
Laura,
the Superstore we go to.
They bring them to our house.
Yeah, I haven't gone that far yet.
We decided the $100 a year was absolutely worth it.
But again, that's a level of privilege that we have.
Yeah. And the level of I cook for 30 people a week.
Yeah. We use that service.
Yeah. When you have that many groceries to get, and depending on the size of your vehicle and so on. And I'm usually running in to grab 1 or 2 other things anyway. So, like, the 20 minutes for me to go, but that's something that I just never went back after the pandemic. I try every once in a while, or been forced back, and I curse myself every time I'm in that store for more than 5 minutes.
Online grocery ordering is the shit.
Yeah, Ashlyn does the grocery ordering. And when we need things from Costco, we have a Dave.
I guess my accommodation for Costco is I just don't go anymore.
That's one way to do it.
For me, it's checklists. It's a blessing and a curse, and I overdo it sometimes.
All the time.
But I spent a lot of time convinced that I couldn't get anything done, and I couldn't remember anything. And I should be able to remember to water the plants. I should be able to remember to scoop the litter box every day, and just blaming myself for
The shoulds.
yeah, the shoulds. And recurring checklist items, and I've got into, Lauren is showing me theirs. I've got into all sorts of, I have checklist templates every time I'm packing and like that. I've overcomplicated it as usual, but it has made me, and I pull my collar uncomfortably at this word a little bit, but it's made me more productive. Not that that is a measure of my value as a human being, but it has made my life easier, and I'm not beating myself up for forgetting to do something basic like that I should remember to do.
Right. Those shoulds are another great area to look into. What's your app of choice?
I still use OmniFocus. It was originally based on the Getting Things Done methodology, which I don't really subscribe to so much anymore. I think it's kind of a useful cognitive tool, if a little outdated. And I take some of it and I leave some of it. But I like OmniFocus, and I can get in there and script some stuff up when I want to.
I'm a big fan of Todoist. I tried to get back into Habitica, but I don't like the punishments.
Ooh.
You just
Don't
you
sound
lose HP if you don't get your stuff done. And I don't like the way that some of the things won't let you repeat on certain... Todoist is really, really flexible, though.
Yeah, you got me back into Habitica, and now I'm thinking about going back to Todoist again, even though it's not as cute. Habitica's got like...
Habitica's very cute. It's like an RPG gamified situation.
That's not what I want out of this sort of thing, but I can see how that would be nice for some people.
Totally.
Yeah. I had mentioned before the turning on the closed captions. Mm-hmm. I can't hear without my TV reading to me. And also, like the AI generated ones for work meetings, because I work primarily from home, it is much easier for me to, I mean, even though they are way not accurate, I can get more of a gist of what people are saying, especially since I know the people's voices mostly.
Right.
And another thing that I've done is really stopped caring. Like how Ashlyn said with their headset, I'm the one who will say, yes, I need this accommodation. I'm going to speak up for it. And that, I'm hoping, will help other people decide that, hey, Lauren said that they needed this accommodation. Maybe I can do the same thing. So try to advocate for both myself and to advocate for those around me. And I do this more in the work setting, because that's where I have zero fucks left to give. Ashlyn will tell you that we're still working on that in our day-to-day life with Lauren and all that. But that's a conversation for me and my therapist, and not me and all of our hundreds of thousands of listeners.
Love your optimism.
You know what is a conversation for our hundreds of thousands of listeners? Linguistic prescriptivism.
Exciting, Jim. Exciting.
I feel like I heard the unsubscribe buttons clicking.
They're going to tell us off in some more one-star comments.
Yeah.
No, that was earlier during you can look up the two kinds of MIs if you really want to.
Yeah, the last few people who are diehard fans were just like, come on, this show's got to get better.
Hi, Ryan. When I say the word dead language, what do you think of?
Latin.
A language no one speaks anymore.
Would you classify English as a dead language?
No.
Then why are people prescriptive about it?
Good question, Lauren.
Because they need to feel morally superior about something, and this is the thing they've chosen.
I'm a linguist. I'm a lexicographer of some points. I mean, I use that sort of candidly, but I used to believe in linguistic prescriptivism, that English had a set of rules and you can't go against them. And I've thrown that, the more I've learned about the English language, the more I've thrown that out the window. You're taught a lot of things in grade school and high school and post-secondary English classes and grammar classes, but a lot of them don't work in the real world. you're allowed to use the passive voice. It may not always be what you want, but you may find a use for it. Here I am saying you. A use may be found for the passive voice. That may not be one, but there is a use for the passive voice. You may have been told that paragraphs should have at least 3 sentences. Yeah.
What a boring way to write.
Yeah. People are still being taught that. You get your set of rules, and then you live with them for the rest of your life. And that's not true anymore. English is changing. English has changed. English is constantly changing. Especially since a language like English doesn't have, like, the academy. What is the academy in France that controls the French language?
It's got some really long French name.
Yes.
But yeah, I know what you mean. They're like very much, we have decided this is the word, and this is the word for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
English doesn't have that. English is constantly changing.
I'm sorry to inform you, it is just l'Académie Française.
Yeah, okay.
The French Academy.
Yes. But they have put together this big long list of French rules.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't classify French as a dead language either, because the Académie Française, they are constantly updating. They should be anyway.
Do you want to perhaps give our listeners a definition of prescriptivism versus descriptivism?
So the difference between a descriptive grammar and a prescriptive grammar is it's comparable to the difference between constitutive rules. They determine how something works. So you've got the rules for the game of chess. Those are set in stone. And regulatory rules, like rules of etiquette. That is a more descriptive. Etiquette is always changing. Your language rules are always changing.
Yeah.
So a descriptive rule just describes things the way they are, whereas a prescriptive rule describes things the way they ought to be.
According to usually those in power.
Right, exactly.
Prescriptive grammar for English really rose in the 18th century. Because before then, you'll look at something like Shakespeare, or you'll look at Chaucer, or I'm using England English as a, because that's where we're getting a lot of this from. Spelling was loose, grammar was loose, all of those things were whatever you could get. But in the 18th century, they were trying to codify English. Apparently there was an urgency surrounding the notion of a standard language in the 18th century, and people needed to know who they were talking to. And judgments were everything. So if you hear something like the RP, the received pronunciation in Britain, which was the gold standard for English, you have to learn this is the pronunciation you use, this is the grammar you use, and if you have any sort of, you hear it in England all the time, if you have a northern accent, you're considered not as smart. And same over here, like an American southern accent is considered to be less smart, I would say.
Yeah, it's considered common. Like like there's an ignorance that comes with it.
Yeah.
For no reason.
And if you're going to be a real professional, you should learn to speak properly.
Yeah.
I did a lot of journalism stuff, and they teach you speak in this. It's not even a Midwest U.S. It's
the Mid-Atlantic accent.
The Mid-Atlantic. Well, it's grown past the Mid-Atlantic, because when you think of Mid-Atlantic, that's something like Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
That kind of accent.
But until then, you know what they say: chin up, tits out, and watch for the shoe.
It's a
not
very
quite British.
it's a very time and place accent that doesn't exist anymore.
But the standard American English, you'll hear it in California and New York mostly. With the newscasters, there's not a drawl, and you're not getting the Midwestern, like where you pull your A's long and that kind of thing. So that is more pronunciation, but it also prescribes to grammar as well. We talked about accents. We talked about prescriptive grammar. We talked about all those kinds of things. There is a way where, have you heard about plain English, plain language?
Yes.
And how things should be written in plain language. That's how I've been taught to write as a technical editor, using plain language so the average person can understand it. When you are writing something for the average adult user who is an English language, like English is their primary language, you are usually writing for what we would consider a 6th grade level. You're not writing for a university level. You're not writing for even a high school level. You're writing so somebody with a 6th grade English education can understand it. And at that level is where we have found that it is the easiest way for people to understand what you are saying to them. A lot of my job is, it's translating legal and engineer into English, because those are two worlds that they have their own jargon, and jargon is a subset of language that is prescriptivist, and it keeps people out. It is a gatekeeping.
Well, let's just think about the first segment in this. There was so much, I'll call it jargon. The words do have specific meanings, and when you work in that field, it's important that you distinguish which, the ischemia from the infarct from the whatever. However, for the vast majority of the people on the planet, you are wasting precious moments that you could have been helping someone by using those words, right? So that's,
heart feel bad. Go to hospital. Doesn't matter if it's an infarction or if it's a heart failure or heart attack. Doesn't matter.
I will send my segments to you in the future.
I'm not asking for that because I'm not being a prescriptivist.
I wasn't trying to downplay. I'm just saying, it's And there can be reasons why there are those terms, but then there is also an expectation that once you know those terms, you use them all the time, no matter who you're talking to or in what context.
And I do think, Jim, that you do a good job of explaining it around into plain English.
It takes you a while. When I remember that I'm using jargon, and I can usually explain it. Sometimes I forget, though.
It's the people who can't. I'm doing a lot of training right now of new technical editors, and we have templates that are written in legal English. They're written by lawyers, and I have an entire, it's broken down into 3 sessions, but it's 6 hours of going through our most prescriptive template with all the most legalese in it and explaining it to them in plain English. And that's part of my job, as I literally consider myself a translator. But we don't need to write them like that, because the people who these are intended for they don't have a translator. You have to think of, when you're writing something or you're putting something out into the world, who is your intended audience? Lawyers are writing for other lawyers. It's my job to take that and go, okay, because I write for vendors. I write for people who are going to be bidding on the work that my company wants them to do. And usually these are small business owners. These are guys who run construction companies. And I'm not saying that they can't be lawyers. I'm not saying that they don't understand the legalese, but I'm saying that we have to give everybody the equal chance to know what the work is and how they need the work to be done. And they don't, before you signed a contract, always have your lawyer look at it no matter what. But you should be able to have a gist of it without having somebody who costs $150 an hour to explain it to you. I do not cost $150 an hour. I'm just taught by people who do. There are some, when I teach, and also when I interview for jobs, I tell people that if I had one wish for the English language, it would be to get rid of the word utilize, which is why Ashlyn was using it in their segment.
I think they were utilizing it, yes.
Yes. The word use it's the same word. Utilize and use have the exact same meaning. You use the word utilize when you want to sound fancy pants.
To me, it just ends up sounding superfluous.
Yes, it does. Which is the perfect word for that term. But I'm trying to take out words like utilize out of our documents and out of our daily lives and go, why not just use? It's a much easier language much easier word to use, literally. And for people who English is not their first language, it's easier to learn a smaller amount of words. English has it's beat up other languages and rifled through their pockets for spare grammar. And then just pulled them in from everywhere.
I want to see a cartoon of that.
There are. I've seen. I'll see if I can find you one. But so we'll pull in things from Latin. We'll pull in things from Greek. We'll pull in things from dead languages like Latin and Old Greek. We'll pull in things from French.
Basically anything we can get our hands on. We're like, ooh, that looks nice.
Going far back, I mean, English has the same roots as Germanic, it's from Old Germanic. So it has the same roots as I'm learning Norwegian, have been for the last 4 years or so. German is its own, let's not get into German. But as I'm reading through things in Norwegian, I'm going, okay, I can see how they got to that word and where English branched off from that and also pulled in some of the French and going, what? So it's a very hard language to figure out.
I think some historians might quibble with pulled in the French, more like the French came in and stomped the grammar into the English for a few hundred years, but yeah.
Yes, it has to do with the ruling class, because the ruling class used French and then the common people used English coming from. And that's why we have fancy words like beef instead of cow.
And pork instead
of pig. Yeah.
Hors d'oeuvre.
Yes. Instead of
appetizer?
Yeah. Snacks. S-N-A-X.
Crudité instead of broccoli and dip.
Oh, that one drives me nuts. Yeah. Oh, there's just a few of those ones that I'm like, how pretentious can we get here?
And we do have to get broader as well, because we've changed things like saying English is a second language. Used to be the term. Now it's English as an additional language, because we are realizing that more people are coming in, and English is a difficult language. Most native English speakers do not know another language as like fully.
Right.
And that's because English is hard to learn. But if somebody is coming in from a different language, they probably know several other languages. So that's English as an additional language, not centering English first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important thing to think of, that here we think of, well, if you learn English, that's enough. And it's like in many, many parts of the world, people just grow up learning multiple languages. They have the one they use at home. Maybe they use a different one at school, or it's the same, but there's probably like a neighbor town they use another language, and they have those kinds of things. It's something that our kids go to school in French immersion, because we both did French immersion, and it's good to learn extra languages, but it's that debate. Oh, well, wouldn't that be too hard for them to learn 2 languages? I'm like, people around the world do it all the time without even making that choice. It's just natural because of where they live. So I think our little English selves will be fine.
Yeah. We also see it in something like AAE, when you're bringing in African-American English.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It used to be called AAVE, which is vernacular. It's not a vernacular. It's an actual, it's English. Same with any other, was talking before about somebody using more of a Southern dialect sounding less smart than somebody using a received pronunciation or whatever. We're changing our thought around how the English language works, and we can't be prescriptive about it anymore. I do want to talk about a fun kind of prescriptivism, though. Have you heard about adjectival order? Which is one of my favorite parts of English.
When you were talking about like how English speakers, I thought you were going to go off on a sort of like English speakers don't even understand how difficult their language is, and they can't explain why they do the things they do.
Yeah.
Why do you say a big blue bird and not a blue big bird?
One
is right, one is wrong.
One is unhinged.
Yeah.
Because it goes in a certain order.
Yep.
And this is just something that, as people who have been taught English as your primary language, this is just an order it's just ingrained, and they don't teach it to you.
They should, but go on, because remind me again.
Yeah. It's your determiner. So that is like your the, or and, or your, or these. And then it is the quantity, like 1, many, few, 7, whatever. Then it's your opinion. So it's a delicious or misunderstood or that kind of thing. So you're that's an opinion adjective.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
We can argue that at another time. Then you have your size. So you're huge, you're tiny, or whatever. And then your age, and then your shape, color, your origin and material. So like American or wood.
Wood.
Or velvet or whatever. And then you have your qualifier. So like a hound dog or a denim skirt, a pickup truck, that kind of thing. So if I'm trying to put together an adjectival order. We have the, many, misunderstood, tiny, old, ugly, yellow, English words.
Wait, is ugly not opinion also?
But it made sense there.
Yeah.
It made, like, it worked. But if you just switched to, like, yellow, ugly English words, it suddenly doesn't make any sense.
You can make that work, though. I mean, if you wrap your brain around it,
But it sounds a little wrong.
Yeah.
It automatically sounded and felt.
Yeah.
It felt wrong.
Yeah. And even small children will understand this adjectival order. Mm-hmm. And they might screw it up for a little bit, but then they'll get it together. So,
and we don't correct them on that either. No. That's not a thing. Having conversed with small children learning to speak, I've never said, oh no, you say the small purple dog, not the purple small dog. Like, I don't think I've ever, maybe writing, they might get corrected for that. But even then, I don't think they would. No. But they figure it out.
They
just kind of get it.
Yeah, it's something that is picked up as you learn the language. Something else that I found out, and I think I mentioned it on the podcast before, when we are born, we are able to make all of the sounds that humans are able to make. Mm-hmm. Like you're able to make the glottal click or whatever, all those kind of things. And then as you learn your primary language...
Well, I think it's probably more accurate to say you have the capacity to learn all of those sounds.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, that is a better way to describe it. But then as our sort of brains sort of harden into our language path that we're going to use, it changes. You are unable to do the things that your language does not do unless you learn multiple languages at a young enough age.
Yeah, there are some phonemes that you just sort of lose the ability to do after the first few years of language acquisition, which sucks.
A part of language prescriptivism that I'm still teaching myself to unlearn is some semantical misconceptions. Words that are not real, like funnest and impactful. Apparently not a word.
What?
Again, it's become more into common usage.
Huh.
Yeah.
Meh.
Another one that I've found recently, it's only in the last few decades that English users have been told to use the word healthful instead of healthy.
Yes.
When you're talking about something that would be better for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So healthy is still a proper term in that way, but it's not. I think we switched it to use the word healthful because healthy has a very, well, it's got a connotation.
Yes.
Like a moral connotation.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
That's something that I started learning about near the end of university and through my dietetic training, that like pushing that shift for something, because healthy was more like a descriptor and a connotation, right? This food is healthy, that food is not healthy, which is a different thing. But healthful behaviors or a healthful life or something like that changed the feeling, supposedly. I forgot about that rule, and I don't use the word healthy life or things like that. I use it very in different ways now, but I don't know that one's caught on.
Yeah, but I mean, in your line of work, you will have more impact. You'll be more impactful, have more impact by using the term healthful.
Yeah.
And not giving such a moral judgment.
Definitely.
Yeah. Another word that should be prescriptive, how inflammable and flammable can mean the same thing.
Oh crap, it's on fire! Inflammable means flammable? What a country!
Because they can both mean able to catch on fire. It is best to use flammable and not flammable. Yeah. Because inflammable can also mean not able to catch on fire. So if it is something that is going to catch on fire, use the terms that it actually means something. So save your prescriptivism for when it's going to save lives or not give such a value judgment, that kind of thing. This was very scattered. As English is. We're a scattered language.
And this actually brings us again back to the jargon piece of things. Words mostly exist for a reason. And when you need to get across a very clear and specific meaning of something, you want to use the best word possible for that. And that's where the clarifying words in the jargon or in jargon contexts can actually be really useful to do that.
Provided your audience understands the jargon.
Right. Exactly. So sometimes it is important to say, no, you need to use this word and not this word, even though they are technically synonyms, but not enough. But that being said, those are probably fewer, not the exception, not the rule.
Jem speaking to another resident and saying infarction versus failure is an important piece for how to do the treatment.
Yeah. But
saying to this person, as they're saying, well, did I have heart failure? You're not going to then argue with them as they're in recovery going, no, you had a myocardial infarction. I can't even say it this late at night. You had an MI, and here's why. And I mean, you do it for our listeners because it's an interesting point of view, and you're trying to teach them. But if you're trying to tell somebody, hey, this is how you care for this, the wording isn't as important.
Yeah.
So there you have it, listeners. Lauren has given you permission to joyfully split those infinitives.
Yes, split your infinitives. English is the only language that had a rule against it. Screw it.
The only reason English had to have a rule is because our infinitives have 2 words, whereas other languages, the infinitive is a single word.
Just let them frickin' be. There's a split infinitive. Something nice.
Did we want any other intro to that or no?
No, we've got music.
Cool. I had a wonderful birthday week. I had a really lovely day with my partners. Lauren took me berry picking and thrift shopping, and we had a lovely dinner.
We were so gay. It was great.
It was a wonderful day. And then I had another wonderful day with my birthday party, and it was a joint birthday party with a friend of mine, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And we played some wonderful, very silly games, and it was a lovely time. And I feel very hopeful about the coming year.
Yay. That's great.
That's lovely.
Awesome.
Thank you for including us. My something nice is I built a little free library with my own 2 hands. And I filled it with books, and some of my neighbors have also filled it with books.
They sure have.
Oh boy.
And it is up there now, and it was I poured a lot of sweat into it.
Cursing.
But it is lovely, and I'm very pleased with it. And I'm also grateful to have so many people in my life who support me when times are hard. Thank you for being some of those people.
That's what we're here for.
My something nice was having a really lovely weekend with friends, and particularly getting to hang out for an extended period of time with some of my oldest friends and their partners and their kids, and just having a really, really great time. And we made it happen on short notice, which is unheard of for 3 families with busy children.
Oh, wow.
That's exciting.
So that was like just the fact that it happened, and it was a great time. So that was really, really nice.
It was a great time.
My something nice is, despite the rain that was basically May and June, we do have a garden. There's tomatoes growing in our tomato plants. I'm excited for that. The berries that we picked, both the strawberries turned into jam and our homegrown Hascaps turned into jam. So I'm trying to keep on top of that. So that's been very domestic and very interesting, and trying not to let things go to waste, because this year we're going to need every crop that we can get.
Nice.
That's about it.
Excellent.
Well, thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, Jem. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Show notes and references for all of our episodes are available at lueepodcast.com, where you can also find links to donate or get in touch. If you'd like to support the show, the best way to do that is with a review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you found us, or by sharing this episode with a friend.